really, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you during this Nordic Talk. So allow me, first of all, to give you a quick look at the program of this Nordic Talk. The Nordic Talk is organized by the Office of the Vice President International and the Francophonie of the University of Ottawa, jointly with the 5 embassies of Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden. It is a part of the series, the International Hour. Donc, il fait partie de l'activité L'Heure internationale de l'université. In a few seconds, the official welcoming and openings remarks will be pronounced by our university president, Professor Jacques Frémont. Right after Mr. Frémont, our colleague, Professor Monica Gettinger, will be your host. She will introduce the panel and facilitate the discussion and the Q&A contribution with our 5 distinguished invitees, the ambassadors of the 5 countries I mentioned. Monica, at the end, will say a few words of conclusion, and she will invite Professor Sani Yahya to officially thank the panelists and close the Nordic Talk. Before we start, I will remind you of 3 instructions. Please mute your microphone. Please write your question in the chat box. And for your information, this Nordic Talk will be recorded and will be shared on our International Hour webpage. So it's my pleasure now to give the microphone to our president, Professor Jacques Frémont. Jacques, le microphone est à vous.
Merci beaucoup, Adel. Again, apologies for running late. Really, I was stuck. It's rare, but the Teams link was not working. So, Your Excellencies, ambassadors and diplomats in Ottawa, distingués invités, chers collègues, mesdames et messieurs, donc j'ajoute ma voix à celle d'Adèle pour vous souhaiter la plus cordiale bienvenue à l'heure internationale de l'Université d'Ottawa pendant laquelle nous discuterons des approches nordiques aux économies vertes. I'm very honored that we have with us today many ambassadors and diplomatic representatives from many nations. This is a thrill for us, and it is a special occasion that COVID-19 will not prevent us from working and having most meaningful dialogues. We have a few special guests today, and I would like to address a special welcome. Ambassador X-Ger of Denmark, Ambassador Alin of Sweden, Ambassador Asgeirsson of Iceland, Ambassadors Designate Fredriksson of Norway, and Deputy Head Mission A. Kila of the Embassy of Finland, and apologies for having offended the pronunciation of your names. We are thrilled again that there are so many representatives of various embassies and countries in Ottawa. I would have loved to welcome you on campus. We would have loved to have le verre de l'amitié, have a drink after that, and certainly to have a more informal conversation. It will be for some other day. I'm delighted that we will discuss this morning an extremely important topic. How can we learn from the examples of the Nordic nations as we pursue a green economic recovery from COVID-19? Because my understanding is that the green economic recovery will be on the agenda for many of our countries. It will certainly be on the agenda of this country. Whenever we gather for an important event like this, even online, it is our custom to begin by offering an Indigenous affirmation in support of reconciliation. We pay respect to the Algonquin people who are the traditional guardians of this land. We acknowledge their long-standing relationship with this territory, which remains unceded. We pay respect to all Indigenous people in this region from all nations across Canada who call Ottawa home. Nous reconnaissons les gardiens des savoirs traditionnels, jeunes et âgés. Enfin, nous honorons aussi leurs courageux dirigeants d'hier, d'aujourd'hui et de demain. At the University of Ottawa, as you probably know, we are very committed to doing our part to create a sustainable and prosperous future. It is very important. Our researchers from all fields of science are developing new materials, new technologies, new treatments, and new tools for understanding our world and for understanding our place within this world. The University of Ottawa is proud to be a global university with a global outlook and a commitment to global issues. It is no accident that our student body is made up of students from 147 countries. So that's quite a few countries. We're working on the few countries left out, since we're actively engaged in impactful partnerships around the world. We understand that environmentally and economically, we live in a global village, a shared ecosystem in which we are increasing interdependent and destined to rise or fall together. If there's any doubt, all we have to do is look across the country where today the tragic wildfires consuming millions of acres in California are also making Vancouver's air unbreathable. And it is food for thought. I've been told that in Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal, we are even breathing that smoke as we speak. This is why we need today's discussion and more like it, as well as actions that will make a real difference so that our public health crisis can also become a catalyst for achieving a truly sustainable future. And so, with that in mind, I will stop speaking and turn it over to my esteemed guests so that they may listen and learn. But before, again, let me say a big thank to all our panelists, and especially to Ambassador Exger of Denmark, who suggested the idea of this panel when we met in March. It was March of this year, a few months ago, but it feels like it was years ago. But still, and to Professor Monica Gattinger, my very esteemed colleague, who will moderate this panel. I do wish you a very fruitful conversation this morning, and thanks again, everyone, for your presence this morning. It is a pleasure having you on our virtual campus. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor.
Merci, Jacques. Il me fait un énorme plaisir de pouvoir animer cette discussion importante sur les économies vertes, puis les sentiers pour pouvoir diminuer nos impacts sur les climats de la planète. Climate change is a grand challenge of our time. It's really an energy challenge. How to transform our energy systems to reduce GHG emissions. Globally, the world still depends on fossil fuels for close to 85% of primary energy demand. And energy demand is growing. This is the 10th consecutive year that the world has seen an all-time high for energy consumption. Certainly 2019 was 2020 is another story, as we know, given the global pandemic. Transforming our energy systems, diversifying so there is more renewable energy in the mix, so that emissions from fossil fuel production and consumption are declining, so that emissions in the air are captured, and doing all of this in a way that ensures energy needs are met, that energy is affordable, that it's reliable, that it's secure, that it's safe, that it attends to other environmental imperatives beyond the climate, impacts on land, water, air. That's a grand challenge to which all of us must turn our attention. This is an area that I work on in my research, engagement, and teaching. And I know from personal experience that it requires a lot of perseverance, a lot of optimism, a lot of creativity, and tremendous amounts of collaboration. It's exciting stuff. It's very exciting times, but it's complex and challenging as well. So we are so very fortunate to have with here today leaders from the Nordic countries to share with us the experiences of their countries addressing this grand challenge. They're going to share with us a number of different paths forward, from the business case for renewable energy to the need and opportunities for cooperation, to emerging energy sources like geothermal, to how to align hydrocarbon production and reducing GHG emissions and new business models for the future. This is extremely exciting. There are multiple opportunities for us to learn from one another, to collaborate, and to work on these complex issues together. And I really hope that this session will help to set the stage for future collaboration, not only between the Nordic countries, but also between your countries and Canada. So with that, I'm going to turn us over to our ambassadors panel. We're going to begin with a brief presentation from each ambassador and then move into a question and answer session. So I believe that there's a presentation that's going to be put up on the screen for everybody to see now. And we're going to begin with the ambassador of Denmark, Ms. Hanna Fugel Eskjær, who's going to be speaking with us today about a clear business case for choosing renewable energy. Ambassador Eskjær.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's a real pleasure to be part of this webinar, and thank you for the warm welcome from Ottawa U and from our great corporation. I have the pleasure to start our Nordic tour, where I will focus on the green transition in Denmark. And I'll try to illustrate that going green can go hand in hand with economic growth and job creation. As you will see in my first slide, Denmark's energy system has really transformed over the last decades. It actually started when we were very hardly hit by the oil crisis, the high oil prices in the 70s. I personally remember how cold the house felt when we had to turn down the heat because we had to save energy. And actually, when we started in the 70s, only 2% of the Danish energy came from renewable sources. Today, that number is 37%. And last year, we set the world record because 47% of our electricity was actually generated by wind sources. We expect to reach an energy mix with 50% from renewables in 2030. But it has not been an easy journey, and it's definitely, we are not there yet. We're still learning a lot through international cooperation, through talks like this, and through cooperation with like-minded countries like Canada. And also a very, very close energy cooperation with within our Nordic friends. On the second slide, you can see that our transition has been based on long-term planning and on several important energy agreements. And what was so special about these agreements is that they had broad political support by almost all political parties in the Danish parliament. This has given political stability and continuity, and has ensured that we were able to do long-term investments and also keep our ambitious long-term goals, no matter actually who was in power in the Danish government. So this move is not something you do from one day to another. It takes a lot of time, as we all know. The latest agreement is our Climate Act from last year. And just like in Canada, the framework and the foundation pillars is our commitment to the Paris Agreement and also to the Sustainable Development Goals. And I'd just like to highlight a few key elements in the agreement. We have committed ourselves to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 70% in 2030 when you compare to the 1990 level. We will reach net zero by 2050, which means that we will be 100% independent on fossil fuels. And the agreement is legally binding. And this means that every 5 years, no matter who is in power, the government will have to set a new 10-year target with concrete goals. And every year, an action plan will be adopted, covering all sectors in our society, because we cannot just focus on one sector. It has to be all of them. The third slide, you can see some of the stepping stones to reach our future 2050 goals in the agreement. Looking into the future, by 2028, renewable energy sources will produce more than 100% of Denmark's national electricity consumption. And actually, it will be one of our export goods that we can export renewable energy to other countries. We will be doing this in many ways, but one of the new ways is to build one of the first 2 energy islands in the world where we will produce offshore wind. But we will also be investing more in new green technologies like hydrogen and carbon capture and storage from industry. Here we can really learn a lot from Canada. I've seen some amazing Canadian businesses developing these technologies because actually none of us are able to do this on our own, as Professor Monica also mentioned. Turning to the last slide. Now you've heard about our journey a little bit and our future goals related to going green. But what has the economic impact actually been? Is the business case really there? That's a question I often get. And since 1990, where Denmark's GDP has grown by 55%, and at the same time, we have seen a drop in the energy consumption of 6%, and we have seen the CO2 emission also dropping by 38%. Today, electricity from renewable energy sources like wind and solar are actually one of the cheapest options in our market. So I think this kind of shows that it is really indeed possible to go green while at the same time growing the economy. So the business case is there. And of course, the Canadian journey is and has been different for so many reasons. You are a much larger country. You have an abundance of oil and gas resources. But this year, on top of the corona crisis that we all felt, you were also hit by kind of a reverse oil crisis with very low oil prices. And I think that that has kind of started or accelerated the approach where businesses and governments will look more into green investments. So to conclude, I will just mention one last area where we, the Nordics and Canada, can work even more together. And that's also in energy efficiency, both in our buildings and in our industry. Because as your Minister of Natural Resources says, the cleanest and cheapest energies is actually the one that we are not using. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ambassador Eskir. That is an enviable performance, and I think many countries, Canada included, would be very interested to learn more about how you reached that cross-partisan agreement and were able to create, a durable, ongoing path to emissions reduction. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that as we move into the discussion session. For now, though, we will move to our next presentation, which will be made by the Ambassador of Sweden, Mr. Urban Allen, and he's going to be talking about Nordic energy cooperation, transmission beyond borders. Ambassador Allen.
Thank you very much. It's a great honor to be with you. And it's also a great honor to talk about one topic that is very close to my heart, and that is the Nordic cooperation, and most of all, the Nordic energy cooperation, because we actually have the most integrated regional cooperation on a free market compared to all the rest of the world. But I need to say first that we are 5 Nordic countries. But in this Nordic energy cooperation, when it comes to the electricity market, that we have the hydro market, as you would say, in Canada, Iceland is not part of that cooperation. They are far away, so they cannot really be connected to the grids. And they will show you later when Peter will talk to you about the enormous abundance of resources they already have. But to start with the first slide, I want to show you how this energy market in the northern countries actually developed. And in so many cases, as usual, the Norwegians were actually the first, the pioneers. And they deregulated their electricity markets in the beginning of the 90s, making it, a free market where the consumers could pick and choose whatever producer of electricity they wanted. And it was a competition on a free market about electricity prices. And as you can see in this slide, more and more countries joined in and said, we also want to deregulate our market, and we also want to join this power exchange. It's kind of a stock exchange for electricity. So we have an exchange that we call Nord Pool, and where you can actually look up on the website and see the spot price for electricity in this second. So we are selling and buying electricity by the seconds in our Nordic countries on a free market when it comes to electricity. And as you can see, this has been a great success. And now it's not only the Nordic countries that are connected to this stock exchange, it's also countries like Germany and others. And it's an extremely important process, because when we are joining forces, we are using all the different natural resources that we have in different countries. You could hear my Danish colleague earlier saying that they produce lots of wind power. In Sweden and in Norway, we have lots of hydropower, and the same in Finland. And we also have nuclear powers, which they don't have in Denmark. So we are together, we can join forces with the different kind of energy resources we have and put that into an energy mix that is actually pretty much the same as the Canadian mix. It is more than 50% is hydropower, around 20% is nuclear power, about 20% is oil and gas, and 10% is wind and solar. So it's pretty much the whole Nordic together. The energy mix is actually pretty similar to the Canadian one. So this is the progress. It started in Norway and it continued with all the other countries. And it has lowered energy prices in Sweden. It has pushed for transmission and transition into more green energy. And you might ask, why? Yes, suddenly the consumer can actually pick and choose who they want to buy electricity from. And as very climate interested consumer, you pick and choose, and you choose a producer who promises you to give you 100% renewable electricity. So actually the market has been the main driver in forcing our producers in the Nordic energy market to go more green, because the voters wanted renewable energy. If we go to the next slide, I will explain to you why this is actually pretty amazing that we have this enormous, wonderful energy cooperation among the Nordic countries. Because you might think it's easy to set up a transmission grid that passes borders and where we can sell and buy energy to each other. And if you think that's easy, you should think again. So if we can have the other slide, please, so I can show how the transmission cables are actually connecting the Nordic countries. There we go. It's not easy to see, but you can see that there is a lot of transmission going back and forth all over the Nordic countries. And I want to explain that, remember that it's extremely complicated to do a transmission grid like this. There has to be a redundancy. It has to produce the electricity at exactly the same second as it consumed. So it's very different from other markets where you can produce something and you can put it in a storage and then use it later on. Electricity is produced at exactly the same time as it's consumed. And that creates a lot of problems in the transmission grid that you need to think about. And I was once a politician, and I was also member of a board of a local energy company. And when we joined forces with Norway and having a market together with them, we made a wonderful deal. We bought lots of electricity from Norway. But the problem was that when we asked for the electricity to be delivered to my hometown later on, the transmission between Sweden and Norway was not good enough. So actually the Norwegian producer could not send the electricity to us. So we had to ask a Swedish coal power plant to start its production of electricity to give us that electricity, because we needed it. But the transmission cables between Norway and Sweden was at that time in the middle of the 90s not good enough to transmit all the electricity that we wanted. So it has been an enormous investment from all the Nordic countries to actually make a market that works. Because remember, if you are in a really free market, the flow of product must be unhindered. So there cannot be any bottlenecks in the systems. It has to be coming to you. So it's a very complicated system, as you can see here. I also want you to see the cable that goes from the southern part of Sweden to Lithuania. That is the cable that we just a few years ago dig through the Baltic Sea. And the cable there is not only important because of the energy market, it is actually also a security policy tool, because many of the Eastern European countries and also among the Baltic countries are still dependent on Russian energy and Russian electricity. So when we built that enormous cable from Karlshamn to Klaipeda, we actually managed also to decrease the dependency on the Russian energy market, which is a good thing, of course. So this stock exchange, power exchange that we have, has pushed the green agenda because consumers have chosen green products, renewable energies. We have been able to use our energy resources in a much more wise way than otherwise we could have done. So we really think this is a good example of how countries could work with each other to really trust each other to have a common energy market. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ambassador. And I couldn't agree with you more. When you said you might think it's easy to connect transmission, it is anything but easy in a sector where you have to have demand and supply balanced at all times on the grid. And when there are often, not only technical issues, but political barriers as well to to connecting up those transmission sectors. I have no doubt we'll have some questions coming forward on that in the Q&A session. For now, though, conscious of time, let's move on. Make sure we can give all of the ambassadors an opportunity to present and then get some questions in. Our next presentation is from the Ambassador of Iceland, Mr. Pétur Ásgeirsson. He will be speaking about geothermal, green energy into the future.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Professor, and thank you, University of Ottawa, for the cooperation. I want to introduce to you Iceland's use of geothermal power and also introduce the Icelandic government's climate action plan. And if you could have the first slide. Before we start, I want to explain to you briefly what geothermal power is. It is essentially earth heat. It is energy that we bring up from the earth. And there, the second from the left is go back, please. Yep. Second on the left is the system that we are using in Iceland. We drill holes that are up to 12,000 feet and bring up water that is about up to 150 Celsius. And we've been doing this for almost a century now. And what we've learned is that the temperature stays the same as long as you don't take too much water. So it's completely sustainable. If you could have the next slide, please. Iceland, as you know, lies in between Norway and Greenland in the Atlantic Ocean, just south of the Arctic Circle, and it sits right on the ridge between the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates. And the two plates are drifting from each other slightly, about 1/3 of an inch every year. So Iceland is getting bigger. You see the right and the red and black dots, they represent geothermal areas. And as you can see, they are distributed all over Iceland. Iceland is the hottest hotspot in the world. Next slide, please. Now, Iceland was a pioneer in the use of geothermal energy. And today we enjoy virtually carbon emissions-free electricity and heating. Practically all stationary energy is derived from renewable resources, geothermal and hydro. Next slide, please. I couldn't resist having this photo. It's a wonderful old photo, and it shows where they're building the world's first geothermal district heating systems in 1944. As you can see, they are isolating the pipes with turf, and then they pour concrete over it Today, 92% of the population of Iceland have access to district heating, and that you will find that is the highest percentage in the world. And actually, Denmark is number 3 on that list. Next slide, please. Geothermal hotspots can be found in basically all over the world, in many countries around the world. And in Canada, there are usable geothermal areas in Alberta, British Columbia, and the Northwest Territories. The next slide, please. And now we turn to environmental matters. Iceland has an unusual CO2 emissions profile. In most developed countries, energy production is the biggest source of emissions. Not so in Iceland. None of our emissions comes from energy production. Our emissions come from, first and foremost, from the production of aluminum and ferrosilicon, about 48%. Road transport, agriculture, fisheries, of course, the fishing fleet, and waste management represent the rest of our emissions. Next slide, please. In 2018, the Icelandic government introduced a climate action plan. And this year we had version 2, where they added quite a few points. The plan consists of 48 action points, ranging from increased carbon tax and recovering wetlands and reforestation to building infrastructure for electric vehicles. As you can see, we are sort of coming from both sides at the problem. Recovering wetlands and reforestation is crucial because we will never become neutral, carbon neutral without it. We already have the second highest market share of electric and hybrid cars after Norway. And yeah, next slide, please. Reducing the carbon dioxide emissions from heavy industries is very high on the list of priorities for the government, and they have already made agreements with the multinational companies that own and run these plants. And the hope is that in the next few years we can reduce the emissions from those. And our aim is to reach our Paris Agreement goals for 2030, of course, and also to be carbon neutral by 2040. Next slide. I couldn't resist adding this beautiful photo from Reykjavik at Christmas time, and there's a reason, because if you look down the center of the photo, you see this black street. And why is it black? It's black because we use geothermal energy. We pump the hot water straight into the sidewalks and the streets of downtown Reykjavik and keep it safe for walking. And the same method is used all over Iceland for private homes and in other towns as well. Next slide, please. And to sum up, geothermal energy has and will help Iceland reduce CO2 emissions. Geothermal energy is sustainable and green energy, and there's a wealth of unused geothermal energy in many areas around the world. That's all from me. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ambassador. I love the photo of the district energy heating system. It made me think of pipelines and, you know, some of the challenges that we see on pipelines. It's a different sort of pipeline. I think also in Canada, we'd be quite interested in learning more about those heated sidewalks and roads with winter coming. Thank you so much. That was a terrific overview of the opportunities that geothermal energy has offered Iceland and potentially other countries around the world, including Canada. So we're going to now turn to Norway and the ambassador designate of Norway, Mr. Jon Fredriksen. And I am told that we are very fortunate. This is his first public presentation in Canada as ambassador designate. We couldn't be more thrilled that it's here at the University of Ottawa. And he will be speaking to hydrocarbons and beyond, green transition and the blue economy. Ambassador-designate Fredriksson, the floor is yours.
We cannot hear you. Can you please unmute your microphone?
Here we go. Thank you, Dr. Göttinger, and thank you again for having me at the University of Ottawa. It's a great pleasure to have my first public appearance in Canada at this university, and also a great pleasure to do it together with my Nordic colleagues. One always feels safe in Nordic companies, so thank you very much. I'm going to say something about the developments that we have had and that we have in Norway when it comes to greening our economy. As you know, Norway is in a special position in the sense that we are a huge producer of hydrocarbons, and that puts us in a situation where we need to take a special responsibility also for how we structure our economy and our energy production in the future. But let me just start also by saying thank you to Ambassador Arlene for giving us this wonderful example of Nordic cooperation. I'm coming out of a job as foreign policy advisor to our Prime Minister before I came to Canada, and had the privilege also to follow the work of the Nordic Prime Ministers on these issues. And I mean, the Nordic countries are not a federation. We're not even an international organization, and still we manage to do so much together and pull in the same direction. And I think it's fair to say that we do national policies that then become Nordic solutions, and also in the end maybe European solutions. So I think we should be very proud of that. And I would like to mention especially also that the Nordic Prime Ministers last year met in Helsinki and agreed that we should work closely together in order to become carbon neutral. We don't have exactly the same goals, and we don't have exactly the same sort of stopping points as we move along, but the idea is to coordinate closely, so to pull in the same direction. Now, Norway may seem like sort of a Janus-faced country when it comes to these issues. We produce a lot of hydrocarbons. We export all of them. We don't use them much at home. We have 94% renewables for our own electricity production, and that's mainly hydropower, a little bit of wind, which we will develop further. I'll come back to that. So we're exporting hydrocarbons and are emission-free when it comes to electricity production ourselves. That, you know, puts a lot of responsibility on us. And what we are in Norway is that we are very dedicated to look at what's going to happen when the hydrocarbons finally run out. I mean, we've been debating for decades what comes after oil. And we are now beginning to see how that will look. What we're aiming to do is to produce our hydrocarbons in the cleanest way possible. We're talking about carbon taxes. We are talking about a ban on flaring, which has been in place for many years already. And we are first and foremost talking about using, you know, the technologies that we developed in producing hydrocarbons to transit into a much greener economy. And we can see also that now that some of the Norwegian oil companies are now investing heavily in greener ways of producing energy. Just yesterday, one of the biggest one, Aker, announced that they would go out and invest heavily in the sea wind and other forms of renewables. So I think that's a development we will see more of in my country. Other key words I should mention here is carbon capture and storage. We have some heavy investments, both public and private, in that area. There's offshore wind, which will be a huge thing in the future, we believe. And we have just launched the two first sort of offshore fields for licensing offshore wind in Norway just this summer. And again, Norway is also an ocean country. We live off the ocean in many ways. So the sustainable blue economy is very important to us. Green is blue in the future as we see it. Right now, what the oil business has been doing in Norway is to do electrification of oil and gas platforms. I would like to have my plan was to show a slide, you know, with an oil platform with a cable and a socket. I didn't find one, but that's what you have to imagine, that we're actually taking electricity from land and powering the oil and gas platforms now with electricity from renewables onshore, which will actually reduce the carbon footprint of a given platform by 90%, which is quite a lot. So that's not saying that it's a total green solutions. We're still producing the oil and the gas, but it's done in a much cleaner way. As I said, we have 2 areas that will be open from the 1st of January 2021 for producing sea wind off the coast of Norway. They should be producing about 4,500 megawatts of wind power when they get operational in the future. And we have also investments in a new research center to focus on offshore wind. So this is really a big thing for us in the future. And I mentioned the CCS capture and storage of carbons, and we have heavy investments there from both Equinor, Shell, Total. They have gone together in a consortium and done investments in what calls the Northern Lights project. To do actually storage on the Norwegian continental shelf of carbons. So we are very excited that this is moving forward. And internationally, this has also been made possible because we have some updated the London Protocol in 2019, which makes it actually possible to move carbons for storage internationally. I think another core issue here is to use electricity from renewables efficiently on roads and on water. So as was mentioned already, Iceland is a big player when it comes to electrical cars. So is Norway. Last year, 2019, 47% of all new cars in Norway were electric. More importantly, perhaps in the bigger picture, is green shipping. Norway is still a big shipping nation, 7th biggest in the world. And the International Shipping Organization of the UN, IMO, decided to halve by 2050 the emissions from shipping. If we are to do that, we need to be ambitious, and we need to have huge innovations within shipping. And we are in Norway investing both publicly and privately in emission-free ships, ferries to begin with, fishing vessels. We also see emission-free cruise ships in the future. And eventually this will also have to move into the heavier cargo ships. So again, something where the government is supporting the industry very much. I started by saying also that for us, green is blue. So the Norwegian government is now waging a very active ocean policy, both nationally but also globally. I mean, the OECD has said that probably within or before 2030, we will have 40 million new jobs globally in the ocean-related economy, and that's quite a lot. And we believe that, you know, ocean economy, a sustainable ocean economy, will be a way forward, both to feed the world, but also to green the world. So our Prime Minister is heading a high-level ocean panel globally in cooperation with the UN and the ocean envoy, Thompson from the UN. They were supposed to present a report, a global report, at the Ocean Conference in Lisboa in June. That was cancelled. So, but the report will be presented in December and will give some food for thought and some very serious recommendations globally to how to build a sustainable ocean economy, meaning that it's not all about protection, it's also about finding ways to develop the oceans, but do it in a sustainable way. We also have some international programs for that called Ocean for Development and Fish for Development, which are programs connected with our development aid.
Ambassador, I wonder if I might ask you to hold it there or
yeah,
wrap
absolutely.
it up. Just so we have time for our final presentation.
I'm wrapping up. So thank you for the attention. That's what I wanted to say. A lot of issues in a short time. So again, thank you for the attention and look forward to question and answers.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think, from a Canadian perspective, Canadians very frequently are really looking to what Norway is doing, particularly on the hydrocarbon front, as we are a large hydrocarbon producer as well, and sort of what is the future of oil and gas in the context of reducing emissions. Our final presentation, although I think I might have seen that maybe there are some connection troubles there for her, so let's hopefully she is here, is from Finland, from the Embassy of Finland. It's the Chargée d'Affaires, Ms. Kaisa Heikkilä. Ms. Heikkilä, are you on the line still?
Monica, I'm afraid she disconnected. I'm trying to find her. Maybe we can save some time here and you can start your question period. Okay, and I will try to add her to the panel.
Sure. Why don't we do that? I do want to check in with you, though, Adel, before moving into that in too much earnest. This is intended to be a 60-minute event. We're 7 minutes from the top of the hour. I'm assuming all of our ambassadors have other engagements, as probably many of our participants. Do we have a little bit of flexibility?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can. Is that you?
Yes. Yeah, I'm sorry, Kaisa Heikkilä here. I'm sorry, I experienced some technical issues. Can you see my picture as well? Let's try.
Try again, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
How are you?
Wonderful.
I
We were
apologize.
worried for you. So please jump into your presentation.
Excellent. I'll try to be very brief, and I'm very happy to be in this important discussion with you, Ottawa, and the Nordic colleagues. And I would like to look at why the transition to circular economy is as important as ever, and to look at how it can accelerate sustainable and green recovery. And why is this so? It can lead to the creation of new and decent jobs, especially in the service sector, and new and sustainable global value chains. It has the potential to reduce industry emissions by 50% by 2050 and also support biodiversity. And now to the how. Both the public and private sectors have an important role to play in this transition. And here policies and regulation can enable and support this transition. And this is why the circular solutions can be an integral part in planning the industries and climate policies. And now some examples from Finland. We have a target to become carbon neutral by 2035. And this, pardon me, this is done by placing circular economy at the very core of the economic and competitiveness policies. Here also the accelerating emissions reduction measures and strengthening carbon sinks obviously are key, and here the circular economy can really play a key role. We have as a concrete measure the circular economy roadmaps, which is the main tool for this national transformation towards circular economy. This roadmap includes more than 60 concrete projects and measures in the areas, for instance, of municipal waste, rehabilitation of contaminated land, sustainable food systems, and timber construction. Obviously, renewable energy is a very key area in this circular economy, as for instance, opportunities in bioenergy, such as biodiesel and hybrid solar solutions can provide very important solutions for this low carbon future. Also, the tracing of raw materials becomes increasingly important, which is very relevant in the mineral sector and in developing battery technology, obviously for also energy purposes. And not to forget the importance of innovation and digital technologies. And to be brief, I'll go to my next and last slide, which is about a very important event where also Canada is a key partner. It's the World Circular Economy Forum, which the Finnish Innovation Fund Sitra has been organizing since 2017. And this is really a landmark event for many international partners in the science and policy world, bringing together circular solutions. And this year, this event is taking place online, now only in a week's time. And I really encourage you to attend this event and be active. It really is an occasion to discuss about rebooting our economies in finding circular solutions. There's also a dedicated session on the Canada and the United States and opportunities here. So I'm sure it will be extremely interesting for many, and several side events are due to take place during the whole fall. So this is not the only event, and the main event is then taking place live next year in Toronto. So I really would like to sort of put this out there for everyone who is interested in this important transition towards the circular economy. And to conclude, we are certainly very committed to building back better and greener. And this is all to support, obviously, the Paris Agreement commitments and also the sustainable development goals. So really I would then end here to be brief and allow for some time for discussion. Thank you.
What wonderful! Thank you so much, Ms. Heikkilä, for keeping it so brief, but lots of really important information in there, particularly around how do we transform our economies, how do we transform business models, to reduce emissions over the long term. So this is the point, Adel, where I ask you: do we have a little bit of flexibility on time, or should I be wrapping things up? I don't want to, particularly for our ambassadors, who I'm sure have very heavy schedules. I don't want to impose on them unduly.
Monica and ambassadors, if we can have another 5 to 10 minute maximum, if you agree all of that on that, I think it's really worth. It's very nice presentations here, and it would be really pity if we just cut like this. Maybe we can take it. Let's fix. It's 11 o'clock now. Let's take maximum 10 minutes. Till 11:10, if you agree on. And if you have other commitment, feel free.
Wonderful, Adel. That's terrific. And to all the ambassadors, thank you, because I can only imagine how busy you all are. I really appreciate the extra time. So what I'd like to suggest, we have a number of questions that have been posed here. What I'll do is I will share those questions with you, and then maybe we can just go from ambassador to ambassador. Each of you provide maybe a minute of response to whichever element of those questions speaks to you the most. I think that might perhaps be the most efficient use of our time. So we have 3 questions, one of which was posed immediately after the Danish ambassador's presentation. So Ambassador Eskier, this one is probably mostly for you. And the question is, how did Denmark include workers from the oil industry into the renewable sector? I don't know how relevant that is for your country, just given the nature of your industries. But could you describe, asks the questioner, her name is Annie Russell, any programs that were put in place? And then she also asks, what factors allowed Denmark to avoid polarization for or against energy agreements and ensure agreement across political parties? So think on that, hold your answer for a moment. I'm going to share with folks the other questions that are here. And I think some of them are quite relevant for other countries. So a question from Jerome Marty, or Marty, sorry for the pronunciation if that's not quite right. So the question is, a shift to renewable energy requires producing more metals, such as aluminum. So Europe, Ambassador Auskersen on aluminum, and rare metals for solar, for example. To support the demand, mining will be increasingly significant in natural resources for countries like Canada, but I'm assuming for many of the Nordic countries here today as well. The question continues, estimates for Canada include or indicate that we would need as many mines as we have today to meet the demand and achieve Canadian reduction targets. But I think the fundamental question that could be posed more generally for all countries is, who are producers, how can producers in minerals balance the need for more metals, but also with the impacts associated with mining? So clearly there are other environmental impacts that we see from mining. And then the final question, if any of you are willing to take this one on, comes from Jakob Urbanek. And apologies for the pronunciation if I'm not quite getting that right. But the question is, what is the Nordic position, if such a thing exists, vis-a-vis the broadly disputed Nord Stream 2 pipeline? And I'm citing directly from the question here, not only not green, but also politically doubtful. So what I will do at this stage is turn it over to the ambassadors, and what I'll do is go in reverse order this time so that our Finnish representative can have an opportunity first. So Ms. Heikkilä, 1 minute to just share with us some thoughts on any of these questions. Oh, your mute is on. You need to turn on your microphone.
Right. Thank you. In fact, the mining question is very, very interesting also in terms of the circular solutions question, where we can really advance and scale up solutions, including obviously the mining sector itself. So I think it's good to think about circular economy in a broad sense. We tend to think about maybe easily about recycling of waste only, but it can really have also large benefits for the industrial sector, including on critical minerals, for instance. So I think we can certainly should take this very. It's a very good question indeed. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So again, in reverse order, that takes us to Norway and Ambassador Designate Fredriksson.
Well, yes, also just to comment on the mining question, I think one thing that we are discussing in Norway right now is the possibility of deep sea mining, exactly to get the minerals needed also for the green technology and the electrification in the future. But as my Finnish colleague said, this has to be done in a sustainable way, and the circular economy is definitely something to take into account. So this is a big issue when we discuss blue economy in the future, and we believe that it can be done, for instance, by using some of the technology that has been developed for deep sea drilling of hydrocarbons. This same technology, where you don't put up big infrastructures, could possibly be used in the future in mining.
Wonderful, thank you. Ambassador Ásgeirsson, you had mentioned in your presentation about a lot of the emissions coming from, in fact, heavy industry, including aluminum. I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on this question on mining, or if there were other topics you would want to speak to.
Well, yes, I'm glad somebody mentioned aluminum, because aluminum is important when it comes to producing light vehicles that don't spend much fuel. And Iceland is a good place to produce aluminum because we have green, inexpensive energy. But unfortunately, electricity is not the only thing needed to make aluminum. Also needed is burning coal and wood. And that is the problem. And so referring to your question, Dr. Gattinger, where you ask us about the challenges in our countries when it comes to aligning science, society and policy to lower GHG emissions. The fact is that the University of Iceland, Reykjavik Energy, and the Columbia University in the United States have together developed a way and started a company called CarbFix. And the idea is to capture the carbon from the aluminum plants and pump it deep into the earth where it turns to stone. So that's where the academy and the businesses come together to try to solve these problems.
That's very interesting, and I think an area too, you know, where there could be some opportunities with Canada. I know Canadian aluminum production has been working on these issues as well, and certainly CCS is something that's being done in earnest in certainly in our oil and gas sector, but also in other sectors as well. So I would hope that there'd be some exploration of opportunities for collaboration there between our countries too. Thank you. That brings us to Sweden. Ambassador Alim.
Thank you. I'm thinking about the question about the polarization and how the Nordic countries have been able to find a way forward when it comes to more green energy. And I would like to say the starting point is actually where the Danish colleague started her presentation about the oil crisis. Because all the Nordic countries were very dependent on oil, and we realized that we need to do something. So it is like Ronald Reagan says, you know, that fact has a terrible ability to stick. So you need to look to the facts. And it's the same here. We have the climate change. We know that we need to do something about the greenhouse gases and so on. And we are acting accordingly to what science is saying. And that is helping and drive the progress in all the Nordic countries to be more renewable and find the green solutions to things. And that is the starting point here, really. And, you know, when I was a politician once upon a time, everyone talked about peak oil. And I actually told everyone that the Stone Age didn't disappear because of a lack of stones. And that's the same with the oil. The oil will go out because there will be not so much demand of oil. We will find new ways of doing the energy and creating the energy. And that is what is happening now. And I think the Nordic countries are very well placed. We have lots of renewable already. We have lots of these rare earth minerals. And we are used to do it in a very climate-friendly way. And we look upon it as facts. And that is the most important thing here. You know, the polarization can be for a long period of time, but facts, they stick.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And it really comes, you know, back to this issue of how do you align. This was a question I had pre-posed to the ambassadors that we didn't get a chance to get to in earnest, but how do you align science, society, and policy imperatives? That's a big part of these challenges. So the final word then goes to our ambassador from Denmark, Hanna Eskjer.
Thank you very much. Just to follow up on the last points from my Swedish colleague, I think the consumers also saw that it worked. We got good prices and we got a high degree of energy security. So I think on top of what my colleagues have also said, that kept the pot together and the political agreement together. To the question from Annie Russell's, very relevant question also in Denmark, we are still an oil producing country as well. I think there were two ways to ensure that workers were taking hand on in this green transition. First of all, the businesses, the one producing oil, they started investing in some of the green technologies and ensure that their employees were enriched in the competencies so they could be transforming into the other technologies. So the business evolved and they took their employees in their hand and took them along. And another thing is that we created kind of climate partnerships between government and the business. So 13 different partnerships where CEOs of the big companies sat together with experts from government and developed solutions together so they would last both in the business case, but that we would also bring the people on board and supported by political choices. So a mixture of public-private partnership and solutions and fact that actually worked. I think that was part of the recipe why the support both from our population and the different political parties were still intact after these many years.
Indeed, that's extremely interesting. And I think it's this idea of integrated solutions and then the creativity and perseverance and collaboration that's needed to get there. That sounds like a terrific place for us to end on. What an absolutely rich discussion. So many tremendous and stimulating ideas. And I think, certainly the academic at B sees all kinds of opportunities for collaboration between our countries. I think the other thing I would note is that I have not seen people dropping off of the meeting, which suggests to me that there's a lot of appetite for what you have to say and what you will be saying. So I'm really glad that there'll be future sessions along these lines going forward. So it now gives me great pleasure to leave céder la parole à notre vice-recteur aux affaires internationales et à la francophonie, mon collègue et ami Sani Yaya.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, Monica. It's a great pleasure for me to say a few words at the end of this event. We are very grateful for having had the opportunity to co-sponsor this event together with our partners. In fact, as has been said earlier on today, this is the first time that we have joined forces in organizing such a talk. The Nordic countries have committed themselves to ambitious climate goal toward 2050 in terms of developing energy efficient and low carbon societies. Les expériences que les ambassadeurs ont partagées avec nous aujourd'hui démontrent clairement que les pays scandinaves sont des pionniers de l'économie verte et je dirais même décarbonisée. Dans plusieurs de ces pays, une bonne partie de l'électricité, par exemple, est déjà renouvelable. Et la quasi-totalité l'est dans certains pays comme la Norvège. C'est clair que la transition énergétique nourrit la croissance scandinave. La pandémie de la COVID-19 représente de nouveaux défis, comme vous le savez, mais elle représente aussi, à mon sens, des opportunités que nous pourrions poursuivre afin de changer de paradigme. Nos sociétés vont devoir faire des choix rapides et l'expérience des pays comme le Danemark, la Norvège, l'Islande, la Finlande, la Suède nous montre que ceci relève de l'horizon du possible. I would like to express my warmest thanks to the organizer. A special thank you goes to our guests and speakers and to the University of Ottawa team. Without their assistance, this conference would not have been possible to arrange. Alors donc, merci beaucoup à Adèle et à toute l'équipe et je vous retourne le micro. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Sani, tous les panélistes. Thank you very much. Thank you, Monica. Before we leave, I would like you to give me a very large smile. I will take a picture. 1, 2, 3. And that's done. Thank you very much. And see you soon. We have another project. We will be working together on the roundtable during the Arctic Net conference. So you will hear from us very soon. Have a great day.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.